I'm back in the saddle again, out where a friend is a friend, where the longhorn cattle feed on the lowly Jemson weed. I'm back in the saddle again, riding the range once more.
Welcome to the Power Factor Show.
The bandwidth for this episode of the Power Factor Show is brought to you by the Firearms Radio Network. FirearmsRadio.tv.
Sponsored by Taylor Freelance, Rainier Ballistics, Hodgson Powders, and JPL Precision.
Everybody, welcome to Power Factor. You haven't seen me in quite some time. And contrary to a lot of internet rumors, no, I didn't die. And however, during the month of February, I kind of felt like it, or wished I had, which I'll get to that in a little bit later. And the other one is that I know I did not go to Argentina during the winter and go shoot doves for the whole entire winter, which would have been a nice alternative to what I went through. What I actually went through was spine surgery, and I basically kind of the idea I wanted to put together here in this episode is talking about recovering from surgery, some of the things you can do. I decided to use this time to improve my shooting, and I think some of the things that I came across may really help you out if you go through a situation like this, of things that you can do during the downtime, but also some ideas or concepts that you might even be able to apply today. So to give you a little back history, what happened is that back in July, I started noticing that I was getting pain in my upper back that wouldn't go away. And I ride a sport bike, and I noticed that frequently while riding to work, in the month of July here, it was just absolutely perfect in terms of weather. It was like sunny every day, so I was riding every day that I could. So I noticed that when I was riding, and that I started kind of having pain in my upper back that just really wouldn't go away, and then it kind of started moving down my arm. And I kind of had this problem once before, a couple years ago, where I was experiencing that pain, and it eventually went away after a few weeks. And I kind of thought this time, well, it's probably the same thing, it'll go away, and I'll just, don't worry about it. Well, after about 3 weeks of it not going away, I decided, okay, this is, maybe something I need to go see my doctor about. So I went and saw my doctor, and initially they just prescribed a bunch of exercises, which, you would expect. So I started doing that, and after about a week and a half to 2 weeks, my left hand started going numb. And I realized at this point that it was a little more serious than just a pulled muscle or something like that my left hand going numb or the pain going down my arm indicated that something else was going on. So I went back and saw my doctor, and he referred me to physical therapy. And I went into physical therapy and started that, and after 3 visits, the physical therapist stopped and said, you've got something really seriously wrong with you, that what I'm doing is actually causing you more pain. I'm not helping you out. You really need to go back to your doctor and get an MRI and find out what's going on, because he said, I suspect that you've got something fairly severe going. So I went and had an MRI done, and the MRI pretty much confirmed what the physical therapist was thinking. What the MRI reported is that I had moderate to severe disc degeneration in 4 of the discs in my neck, specifically around the C7-T1 and C5-C6 and C6-C7 area. And that was the cause of the pain going across on my back and then down my arm. And what the technical name for it is stenosis, and stenosis is basically the pinching of the nerve. And I think this was exaggerated probably from, it wasn't caused by riding the motorcycle. I've been riding a bike for years, but the position that I would ride my bike is, since it's a sport bike, a lot of it's weight forward, head back. So you're in a position when riding with your head back at a pretty good angle. And I tend to believe, at least in my case, that it's more comfortable laying down or being forward on the tank, or laying on the tank, so to speak, than being more upright. A lot of people refer to that as a monkey humping a football, but that's a different story. So anyway, I think that's probably what caused a lot of the problem, is that my head was tilted back and pinching that nerve, and it just got worse and worse. So after the MRI report, I went and saw a specialist, and they initially suggested going on steroids, and that did absolutely nothing at all. And then the next step was they wanted to do a cortisone injection. That did absolutely nothing at all. And after that, when I wasn't responding to any of those treatments, they decided to send me to a specialist, a surgeon, a spinal surgeon. And he basically told me what my options were, and I decided that I was going to go forward with the surgery. And the process is known as and this is a bit difficult, and hopefully I'll get this right, but it's a posterior cervical luminoforaminotomy or something like that, which basically is a nice way to describe. They go in, they cut a slit in the back of your neck, they go into your back, and they cut out part of your vertebra to clear or give clearance for your nerve so it's no longer pinched. So what they did is they went in and cleaned out the area between C7, T1 and C6, C7. My doctor told me that as a result of doing this, that I would not be shooting or would not be riding a motorcycle for at least about 4 months. And riding the bike thing wasn't that big of a deal because at this point it was fall, winter, and I don't ride during the winter anyway. But the shooting part would affect me because I have shot before in the winter, and I was kind of looking forward to that. So my surgery was scheduled on the 3rd of December, and when I had heard about not shooting for 4 months, I decided I'm going to shoot every single opportunity that I can during the month of November. So literally every weekend I was out shooting Saturday and Sunday because I figured I wasn't going to be shooting for 4 months. I might as well get as much time in as I possibly could. So what I noticed is that as time went by toward the end of November, that my shooting performance just started falling off pretty dramatically. And I realized a lot of it was caused by the pain that I was experiencing, but I didn't think that pain was the sole issue. I really felt that it was probably a fundamental technique issue underlying that was causing the problem in addition to the pain. So surgery rolled around, I'm not shooting anymore, and I decided at that point that I'm going to, at least during this time, start kind of really taking a personal in-depth dive of what I felt was going on, where possibly some of my issues were in terms of shooting and what I might be able to do to improve that. So the first thing I went and did was go back and reread Gil and Vicki Ash, If It Ain't Broke, Fix It. And we've talked about this book before in the past. I've read this book a couple times before. Actually, my wife is in the process of reading it right now, too. But I went back and read that book. And I'm not going to basically let the horse out of the barn here too much because we're going to do a book review at some point in the future on this book and another one which is called what is it? It's basically called, you refer to it as You've Got to Be Out of Your Mind. It's a book that they have put together on the mental aspects, but I'm getting ahead of myself. So we are going to do a review on this book and that book at some point in the future. So I started reading the book, and there's a chapter in there called the OSP zone system. And the OSP zone system basically says there are 3 zones to shotgun shooting. There's zone 1, which is basically from the bird out 2 feet. There's zone 2, which is about 2 feet out to 8 feet. And then there's zone 3, which is 8 feet out to as much as you got. And they refer to it, Gil being from, I believe, Louisiana, refers to zone 1 as out there, and zone 2 is way out there, and zone 3 is way, way out there. So it says, or Gil says that basically most shooting is done, most sporting clays shooting is done in zone 1. In other words, the 0 to 2 feet, most bird presentations are somewhere in that area. And he said that if you don't tell yourself in advance what zone you should be shooting at or what zone the target is, that you will automatically default back to zone 1. The idea behind the zone system is to kind of take the whole entire mystique or the fear of a lead out of the equation. What you do is you go into a particular stand or shooting position. You identify in advance what the zone needed for that target is. You tell yourself this is 4 feet. And then at that point, you forget about the fact that it takes 4 feet of lead or whatever. You insert 4 feet into the bird when you're shooting, or if you're, we'll just say, you insert 4 feet into the bird and you shoot it. Makes it sound pretty simple. In reality, it is pretty simple. But the problem is that when you get into a kind of a fear situation or a panic situation, it kind of goes all out the window. Well, I realized what my problem is that being a pistol shooter, and pistol shooters and rifle shooters suffer from this, is that we are always trying to put the gun on the target. Whenever you're shooting, steel or paper targets, we drive the gun to the target. So the idea of putting the gun in front of the target is kind of something that's difficult for us. So I realized what my problem was I wasn't going to zone 1, I was going to what I called zone 0. In other words, I was putting the gun on the target, and then after getting it there, realizing I need to be somewhere ahead of it. And I wouldn't make that move typically of somewhere ahead of it. I think I was probably actually riding right on the bird and not applying the proper lead. So that was the first kind of realization of something that I was doing wrong and something that I could actually work on to improve my technique. And I thought, okay, well, that's really good information, because I really think this is one of the fundamental problems, and maybe the fundamental problem of why I'm not shooting really well. So since I figured, okay, I've got a whole bunch of downtime here, one of the other things, and I can't shoot, I can't do anything, I can't pick the gun up. They told me, no lifting of any weight for at least 6 weeks, that I could start exploring at least the mental side of shooting. So at that point, I went back and reread the "You Got to Be Out of Your Mind" book again by Gil and Vicki Ash, and there's a lot of stuff covered in this book, and it is all about the mental side of shooting. And to be honest, I think the book is probably very attractive to people who are in competition shooting. And actually, the reason I don't have it right now is that I've loaned it to one of my competition shooting friends so that he could read it. But one of the 3 kind of fundamental points that I wanted to address or mention in the book is feel, visualization, and subconscious. So before a couple months ago, or many months ago, I did an episode on pistol shooting, and one of the episodes was talking about the power of the subconscious, where you basically need to let the subconscious solve the problem for you. And the other episode was on visualization. And I realized before in the past how powerful visualization and the subconscious are, and also shooting from a standpoint of feel. I really believe that when you go out and shoot, rather than trying to analyze everything, if you basically just let your mind feel the experience or feel it, and the feel part of your mind is part of the subconscious, your right brain activity. The analytical part is left brain activity, and it turns out that you want to basically have your right brain do all of your shooting for you. You do not want to become a left brain shooter where you start getting into analyzing everything. And that's where a feel really comes into play, where you literally feel your way to the target. So, at any rate, the part on visualization and subconscious really clicked, because I knew exactly, based on previous experience, that was a real major breakthrough into learning how to shoot better. So as it would turn out, the timing was perfect that over Thanksgiving weekend, I got an email from OSP School. I'm on their mailing list, and that they literally threw the doors wide open to what's called the OSP Knowledge Vault. And the Knowledge Vault is basically a pay section of their website where they have all their videos, forums, blogs, something called the Coaching Hour, which are audio tapes that they do for a 1-hour segment every month. And at that point, unfortunately, it was open for 4 days, and I didn't go and bother checking it until 1 day into it. So at this point, I really only had 3 days. So I quickly went and grabbed all of the audio files for all of 2013. And just to give you an idea, the coaching hour segments that are on that website go back to 2001. And there's no way that I had enough time to go back and listen to all of it. So I grabbed everything that I could, started listening to some random programs, started watching a lot of the videos that they have, and again, all the videos that they put out on DVD were actually available on the website. So I pulled all of that down, realizing that at some point I can go off and listen to this stuff, and I didn't really realize how powerful the information was in these coaching hours. There is a lot of great stuff covered in them, and I think I'm going to talk about a little bit of it here today. But it's just amazing the amount of stuff that is covered, and stuff that you can really start getting your mind to work on, and then in techniques that you can apply. So some of the concepts that they discussed during the coaching hour, I'm going to pick a few of them here and talk about them. These turned out to be really big for me in terms of improving my shooting. So the first concept that I want to share with you is the acceptance of the barrel as part of the barrel and your peripheral vision as part of, I'm going to call it the sight picture or target picture. The thing is that a lot of beginning shooters are always told, don't look at the barrel. And that is true. You do not want to look at the barrel. The thing is, though, is that you're told so many times, don't look at the barrel, don't look at the barrel. And you're shooting, and all of a sudden the barrel pops into your vision. You're not exactly looking at it, but you become aware of it. And you've been told so many times, don't look at it, that it kind of freaks you out and disturbs you mentally for just a brief moment, which is usually all it takes to missing a bird. And you miss a bird. I realized when I was shooting at times that every once in a while the barrel would pop into my sight picture and I would end up breaking the target. And I was thinking about that after hearing this about accepting the barrel, accepting the bird behind the barrel when you're shooting as being key, that I thought, wow, that's interesting, because a lot of times when I've been out shooting, that I've been breaking birds and actually been aware of the barrel. So maybe there's actually something to this. And it turns out that being barrel aware actually is what leads to you becoming more consistent. The problem is that if you completely blank the barrel out, you really don't know where you are relative to the bird. If you miss, you don't know why you missed or where you missed relative to the bird. All you know is you missed, and you don't know what to do to correct it. So just to give you an idea, not only having heard Gil and Vicky talk about and discuss it on the coaching hour about how important barrel awareness is, I have a book here that I'm going to actually cover or start talking from in the future called Break 'Em All, The Complete Guide to Fixing Clay Target Shooting Problems by McDaniel and Taylor. And just to hit something in here real quick, 2 data points. The most important aspect is seeing the target-barrel relationship, sometimes called the lead. Even if your body is slightly out of position, if you move the shotgun to the target later than you should, you can still have success if you hold off pulling the trigger until you create and see the right lead. You can and must always see the target-barrel relationship prior to the shot. Okay. Next part. Once the gun barrel is in the same vicinity as the target, you will begin to see the relationship between the target and the barrel. This does not mean you're looking back and forth between the target and the barrel, but rather your vision is centered on the target. You sense the barrel in your secondary vision. Regardless of which type of lead you use to break the target, you must always recognize the correct sight picture before you pull the trigger. That's more reinforcement of the information that I had heard in the coaching hour segment. And what I realized is that by being able to be aware of the barrels but not looking at the barrels, it now gives you more information, or at least gives your subconscious more information when you're shooting, that if you do happen to miss, you can go back and kind of replay that image that you were seeing or visualization again and determine what you need to do to correct it so that the next bird you don't miss it. The next thing that they talked about on the coaching hour, which kind of ties into this, is what's called stabilizing the picture, stabilizing the sight picture. So what stabilizing the sight picture means basically is that the gun and the bird are moving at the same velocity, or I should say speed, relative to each other. So what that means is that as you are shooting the bird, the barrel, let's say this is the bird, here we go. This is the bird. This is the barrel. As you're moving along, they're moving at the same speed. Now the problem is let's say this is the barrel, this is the bird, and they're moving together, but the gun is moving faster than the bird. Okay. Actually, I'm doing this in the wrong direction. We're going this way because the barrels are in front of the bird. So reverse that. We're going this way. So this is the barrel, this is the bird, you're moving together, okay? And when you move together in sync, when you break the shot, if you have the right lead to begin with, you'll break the shot. The problem is that if this is the barrel and this is the bird and you're moving together and the barrel's moving faster than the bird, then what looks like the right lead is all of a sudden the wrong lead because you're going to miss in front. The barrel, by the time you pull the trigger or react, is going to be in front of the bird. Conversely, if this is the barrel and this is the bird and you're moving together and the barrel's moving slower than the bird by the time that you break the shot, then you're actually going to be behind the bird. So that's where it's really critical in stabilizing the sight picture, and that the barrel and the bird are moving together, and I refer to as being in sync. Dave Jeffrey, who I shoot with, refers to as locking up the target. And the idea there is basically just that you have a picture of what the barrel-bird relationship is. They're moving at the same speed, and at that point you break the shot. And that ends up being very important to being consistent. Now, one of the interesting things is that one of the guys on the program, on the coaching hour, his name is Shane, has a saying that like a mantra that he repeats to himself every time when he gets into a shooting position, and it goes 95-5, stabilize, stabilize, stabilize. And what that means is that your focus is 95% on the bird, 5% awareness of the barrels, and then you stabilize, stabilize, stabilize the picture. Now, where this gets into the tie back to acceptance of the barrel as part of the sight picture is that you can't stabilize the bird unless you're stabilized relative to something. What are you relative to? The barrel. So that's the key thing, is that you need to become aware of the barrels without looking at the barrels to be able to go and actually stabilize the picture. And once you stabilize the picture, you're then going to find out you're going to start breaking birds more consistently. So the next thing thought I'd started working on then, since I wasn't able to actually do any shooting, but I had now had a lot of powerful information about stabilizing the bird and the barrel being in front of the bird, is visualization, which I talked about before. So what I started actually doing is visualizing basically flight path of birds. I started visualizing literally going around the skeet field, or the skeet station 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8. And at each individual station, I would literally just visualize mounting the gun in front of the bird, stabilizing the picture, and seeing the bird break. And then I would do the exact same thing in sporting clays, or pretending as if I was on a sporting clays course. I would visualize, and this is based on just, going to, or past recognition, if you will, of going to Granite Falls Sportsman's Club and shooting there. I would visualize different target presentations of inserting the gun relative to the bird, stabilizing the picture, and breaking it. And what I'm actually doing at this point is literally programming my subconscious, or showing my subconscious what this looks like, so that when I'm actually able to do it, I've already actually experienced it to a certain degree. I mentioned before that your mind cannot differentiate between reality and images. So I'm effectively showing my mind something without actually shooting. And the beauty of this is that I was able to, like at sporting clays, so to speak, I was visualizing different presentations. I would visualize rabbits, I would visualize chandelles, I would visualize teal, mounting the gun at the right place, and then breaking and stabilizing it, tracking it, and breaking the bird. And stabilizing also is not, and people are going to say, well, you're describing riding the bird. We don't want to ride the bird. Stabilizing is not riding the bird. Stabilizing is just basically spending, and it's like maybe 100 milliseconds or a tenth of a second, just enough to lock the bird up, verify that the barrels are moving the same speed as the bird. You don't want to ride the bird, because when you ride the bird, that causes you to tend to come back and look at the barrels. So I was going through visualization techniques of stabilizing the bird and inserting the gun at the right point, and I was all doing this mentally. So one of the other things that I realized, or I learned about in the coaching hour, was something called the 3-bullet drill. And we did a segment recently that I called the 2-bullet drill. And the only reason why we didn't call it the 3-bullet drill is that initially we had the 3 clay targets up on the wall at John's place, and one of them fell off and broke, and we only had 2 clay targets, so it instantly became the 2-bullet drill. But the same concept there applies. The idea behind the 3-bullet drill is getting you comfortable of mounting the gun in front of the bird, either to the left or to the right. So for a right-handed shooter, if the bird is coming from the left, and we talked about this before, you're going to mount the gun in front of the bird so that the bird is over here relative to the gun, so you're looking down the left-hand side of the gun. And then for a right to left going crosser, basically you're mounting the gun here, and the bird is here, and you're looking across or over the top of the gun at the bird. And this gets you comfortable now with looking, basically rather than looking straight down the barrels, but looking off to the side of the gun. And I realized after reading or hearing about the 3-bullet drill that was one of the fundamental problems that I had during my gun mount exercises I was doing. What I would do is I would pick a spot in the wall, in the corner, or on the ceiling, or whatever, just to mount the gun. I would mount the gun, and then I would look back sometimes at the barrel to see how I'm mounting the gun, how the beads stacked up. And I realized that I'm now kind of programming this whole entire sequence of mount the gun, look at the barrel, mount the gun, look at the barrel, which you don't want to do. And I was thinking, I bet if I'm doing that in practice, I'm probably doing the exact same thing when it comes to shooting. So what I started working on, at least in the terms of the 3-bullet drills, I would mount the gun and have faith in my subconscious that it was mounting at the right spot, and never coming back and actually looking at the barrels or checking the alignment of the beads ever. So I'm just strictly at this point mounting the gun and trusting that I've got the gun mounted properly, and I know that it fits. So I know that if everything goes correct, and I don't screw up and snag my arm, shoulder, or whatever during the mount, that it will line up. So I have faith in that now. I don't need to keep coming back and looking and verifying that, oh yeah, it's the same as it was last time. And that was a huge thing for me. I started doing this exercise, or thought, okay, well, I'm going to start doing this exercise a lot, as much as I possibly can, and that'll help me get through this whole entire issue of looking down the barrel. So at this point, I'm close to about 6 weeks after surgery, which is when they wanted me to start doing physical therapy. And I thought, well, this will be a perfect example. If I can go off and include something that would be kind of fun as physical therapy, which will help build up my left-hand side, which ends up being really weak as a post-surgery because of the nerve damage and scarring and everything. But if I can include mounting the gun as part of my physical therapy for the next 2 months, or whatever it turns out being, until I can actually start shooting again, I'm going to do this as much as I possibly can. Because I figure this just has a double benefit. I'm working on gun mount, I'm working on not seeing the barrels, of mounting the gun in front of the bird, and I'm building up strength. So I did that for about 2 weeks, and then February 2nd rolled around, which I will never forget that day. February 2nd was a Sunday, and the plan was that I was going to go to, in the morning, go to Granite Falls Sportsman's Club and hang out with the guys there when they were shooting an NSCA tournament. And then in the afternoon was the Super Bowl, which you may remember. The Seahawks were battling some other unrecognized team that everybody has forgot about at this point. So my idea was I was going to come home, grab a couple beers or whatever, and watch the game with my wife. At 12:20 in the morning, I woke up in excruciating pain, unlike anything that I had ever experienced before in my life. And I realized that this was not normal. My wife called the paramedics. They came, and they thought it was an appendix. So they said, well, there's nothing that we can really do for you. We think you've had either a burst appendix or appendicitis. We can take you to the hospital, or you can go to the hospital on your own. And I thought, well, my wife can drive me there as well as they can, so whatever. Went into the ER and immediately was admitted. Of course, you would figure that at now, 1 o'clock in the morning, there's not too many people there. And they did a CT scan, and because they thought it was all appendicitis also. Came back and said, it's not appendicitis, you have a kidney stone. And I imagine a lot of the guys watching the program right now, probably who have had kidney stones, know where I'm going with this. It was just unbelievable pain. So they shot me up with a bunch of morphine, told me to drink a lot of water, and suggested the next day that I go see a urologist. So I went home, started pounding water like crazy, and became in even more pain than I was the first time. So back to the ER again. At this point, the Super Bowl had just started. I'm in just unbelievable pain, and everybody's like, oh yeah, watching the TV. It's like, I do not remember anything about the game, but all the people who are supposedly helping me are like, just shoot them up with morphine, and oh yeah, whoa, touchdown. It's like, great. It's like, hello, I'm dying here. So after the morphine didn't do much, they gave me Dilaudid, which helped a little bit more. But they basically got the pain under control, and I eventually went home at about 11 o'clock at night. So I spent a good part of the whole entire day in the ER. Next day I go into a urologist, and they tell me the size of the stone is 6 millimeters by 9 millimeters, which probably really just got the attention of most of you now who have had kidney stones, because that is a big stone. Again, they told me to drink a lot of water, and hopefully it will pass maybe in a month. Considering how much pain that I was in, I didn't think I was going to be able to live a month with that amount of pain. He also told me that considering the size of the stone, they were giving me about a 50% chance that it would pass. So for a whole entire week, I pounded water like you wouldn't believe, living on Dilaudid, being in a lot of pain. After a week, I went back in, saw my doctor. They did an x-ray, and the stone had not moved at all in 1 week. And they said, now I probably got about a 30% chance of passing the stone. It's like going, I do not want to live this way for a month, considering this thing has not moved. So let's go take care of it. Unfortunately, the stone was too big to basically do the normal ultrasound or ultrasonic where they blast it with waves to break it up. What they had to do is go up, crack it into with a laser, push it back up into my kidney, bust it up, install a stent temporarily, which would be there for a week, and then wait for the bits to basically pass. So that's what they did. The stent was probably some of the, not quite the worst pain that I've experienced, but it was a constant nonstop pain for a week, whereas the kidney stone would be kind of sporadic. You'd be dying, and then after a bit you'd be okay. That was absolutely brutal. And you can only imagine how they go up and bust this stuff, and most of the guys now are probably really wincing because that's where they go. They, after a week, pulled the stent out, and all of your vanity goes completely out the window at that point because you were in so much pain that you just wanted to go away. And the stent comes out the same way that it goes in. So after I had the stent pulled, life was wonderful again, so to speak. I was doing much better at that point. So after all that, I started going back to physical therapy again, and I thought, you know what, now that I can kind of, move around and everything, one of the things I learned from listening to the coaching hour was a discussion about having a performance-based mindset versus a learning-based mindset. And a performance-based mindset is basically you go out and you want to bust birds, you want to break birds. When people start having problems or issues with either gun mount or technique or whatever, one of the things that OSP apparently recommends doing is basically breaking the bird out of the equation. So you shift from a performance base into a learning base. Literally what you're doing is that you are shooting birds without shooting the birds. So they throw the bird, you mount the gun in front of the bird, and you stabilize the sight picture. You do everything that you normally would do when it comes to shooting a target, except you don't have any shells in your shotgun and you're not breaking the target. And I thought, wow, this is perfect. I can't shoot right now. I can't shoot for probably a couple more, weeks at this point. But I can go out and I can start working on a lot of this visualization stuff that I've been doing over and over and over, of visualizing inserting the bird or the target in front of the bird, visualizing stabilizing it. Now I can go out and actually work on that and my gun mount at the same time. So for 2 weekends, I went up to Granite Falls and shot with the crew of effectively mounting the gun on every single bird that was thrown. So as an example, over one day, I mounted the gun about 300 times and shot 600 birds. And the really cool thing about this is that it allows you to really see stabilizing the bird, see inserting the gun. So what I do is I started getting this pre-shot routine. I would look at the bird, I would look at the, see where I figured the break point would be. I would say, okay, that's requires 3 feet. And I would say to myself, mount 3 feet, stabilize the picture, break it. And I would, when I was doing this with everybody, I would go out and do exactly that. And sometimes to make it interesting, rather than shooting what was their first bird first, I would actually mount on the second bird to give me more time to see it before they got around to actually breaking it. It also allowed me to kind of play around with different hold points or insertion points, and also kind of play with what's called collapsing lead or diminishing lead. And it's kind of getting ahead of ourselves here. We'll talk about that some other day. But it really allowed me to actually see a lot more than what you, I think, normally would see when you're really focused on trying to break the bird. So again, I did this for 2 weeks, and I really believe that helped a lot. Because at this point, I'm literally now having real mental reinforcement of the visualization that I had done before. So after 15 weeks, went back and did a follow-up visit with my doctor, and he gave me the green light on being able to shoot again. And I can tell you, I did not waste any time whatsoever after getting permission to do that, to going out and shooting. I was out shooting that weekend. And I was really looking forward to actually seeing if any of this theory stuff that I've been thinking about for the last, 15 weeks of all this different stuff I've been doing, of visualization, of the 3-bullet drill, of all the dry fire practice that I've been doing, was really the right thing. And I am really excited to tell you that it was unbelievably the right thing. I went out when the first couple birds that I shot, I realized I really wasn't clearly seeing the birds and stabilizing it, missed them. I remember telling myself, you didn't stabilize the bird. Let's stabilize the bird for the next target. Stabilized it, broke it. Thought, wow, that's cool. That actually worked. And I started just like picking up, I'm going to call it consistency, throughout all the stages that we shot. I remember at one point during all of this that I missed the bird, went back, kind of played the image in my head of what I actually did, where I inserted the gun, thought about it, said, okay, I'm going to insert a little bit further out here, do that, and let's, again, insert at this point. Let's say now all of a sudden, instead of being 3 feet, it's 4 feet, or 4 feet, it's 5 feet, or whatever. Stabilize the pitcher and break it. And the beauty of this is that by seeing the relationship of the bird and the barrel and stabilizing the pitcher, it tells me that if I miss, I know exactly what I need to do to fix it. Whereas before, if I missed, I didn't know why I missed. All I knew that I missed and something was wrong, but I didn't know what to do to correct the shooting situation. So it really turned out to be a huge benefit, all the things that I went through and did in terms of improving my shooting. And I cannot tell you how happy I am about having gone through, well, I shouldn't say that gone through the journey. I would like to have skipped the whole entire surgery thing. I would really like to have skipped the whole entire kidney stone thing. But this whole entire time really gave me a point to personally reflect on what I was doing, analyze probably some of the things I was doing wrong, start thinking about some of the things I could do right to work on it, different techniques that I've talked before about that I learned during pistol shooting that you can apply to shotgun shooting, and it really does work. Up until, like I said, at this one point it was theory, and until you actually put the theory to test and find out if it works or not, it's just a theory, but it definitely does work. So I would really highly encourage all of you to kind of start doing your own, self-evaluation and exploration of all of this. Don't be afraid to see the barrels as part of your sight picture, because this is key. So I thought I'd talk about some just kind of like takeaways here through all of this. And I'm going to mention these here. So takeaways is determine the insertion point and lead before calling the bird. This for me was huge because, like I said before, if I didn't go and decide in advance where I needed to insert the gun, I would insert the gun at what I called zone 0. And my guess is the rest of you probably do the exact same thing. If you're a pistol shooter or a rifle shooter and you're just coming into the shotgun sports, you are going to instinctively want to put the gun on the bird or on the target, because we've been doing it for so long that it's hard to break out of doing that. The other thing it's hard to break out of doing is then doing bead checking of coming back and looking at the barrel. So you really need to work on that. Visualize inserting the gun. Again, visualization is huge. We've talked about this before in pistol shooting. It works for shotgun shooting too. Visualize inserting the gun in front of the bird and then accepting the barrels as part of your sight picture. So again, you really need to just start playing these little movies in your head of visualizing, inserting the gun and seeing the barrels and stabilizing the sight picture as you do that. Other thing to work on is what I talked about before is the 3-bullet drill. That really helped me in terms of improving my shotgun mount and also acceptance of having the bird behind the barrels and not looking down the barrels or checking the barrel sight alignment as I was shooting. And lastly, drink a lot of water. Now, you're going to say, what does that have to do with shooting? Absolutely nothing, but it has a lot to do with avoiding getting kidney stones. And I can tell you, if I haven't expressed this before, you do not want this to ever happen to you. Unfortunately, they say odds are that if you have had kidneys or you have a kidney stone, you'll get another one in 5 years. I do not want to repeat this again, so I'm now becoming a water drinker. I think that was my issue before, is that I just would not drink enough water. You would get dehydrated, and at that point, it's all downhill. So I've now started drinking a lot more water and fluids. It's not just water, but I mean little fluids in general. To help avoid this, because I don't want to do this again. In fact, to give you an idea of pain, and you can express this or tell women this, that they'll probably say, oh, that's nothing compared to childbirth. Well, women who have been through kidney stones, and it's not just something that men get, however, men get it more than women, but women who have had kidney stones will tell you that kidney stones are worse than childbirth. So there you go. You've got something that will exceed their pain level or pain threshold or whatever the case is. So, okay, that's it. Hope you learned something from all this. If you do have to go through surgery or whatever, again, the idea here is to use that time to your benefit. Don't just, the recovery is part of it, but the mental side of it and what you can work on is also a big part of it, so that when you do get back in the game, you're ready to go. And I literally am ready to go at this point and really looking forward to it. So, again, you can, if you have any questions about any of this, you can email us at powerfactorshow@gmail.com, website powerfactorshow.com, and the ever popular facebook.com/powerfactorjoe and Power Factor Show. And I'm happy to report that Rick is now on there. So we've actually now educated Rick that Rick is now on Facebook. So you will not hear him in the future go, Facebook. Blah, 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 blah. He actually knows how to get there and knows what to do when he gets there. So major accomplishment. Okay, thanks for tuning in. We'll see you next time.